Welcome to Association Chat. You're here. You're at the right place. It's that time of the week again where we have our online discussion for the association community, where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the association community. I'm the host of Association Chat, Kiki L'Italien. And before we get started, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the Patreon patrons who help make all of this happen. It takes many hours and lots of technology and sweat and tear and struggle and strife and lots of good times too. But thank you for helping to make all of this happen. If you feel like showing your support for Association Chat, then please look for Association Chat on the patreon.com website. And I will also be sharing a little bit of information as we go along during today's interview. You know, maybe you've used story at work when you've been looking at your branding, or maybe you've discovered the best way to tell an unforgettable story about that time that you took that fishing trip with your uncle, whenever you go to networking receptions. But if you are like most of us, many times you don't even know how to reach the good stories that you have, or if you have any good stories to tell, even the ones that are lurking right there beneath the surface in your own life. So today's guest is masterful at uncovering those stories. David Nadelberg is the founder of the international multimedia storytelling project Mortified. Since launching in 2002, Nadelberg grew the project into a global grassroots brand that now includes a weekly podcast. He actually has a new podcast too that I'm going to ask him to tell you about in a little bit. 2 acclaimed books, events from LA to DC to Paris, an independent film, Sundance Channel talk show, 2017 miniseries for Netflix, and so much more. Dave is amazing and had the wonderful chance to work with him years ago as some friends of mine and I helped him to bring Mortified to DC. And so I want to welcome Dave up right now. Dave, thank you so much for being here. Oh my gosh.
Thanks, Kiki.
I'm excited. I'm really hyped.
Oh, I'm super excited.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we talked about leading into this is about, some of the craziness that this year has brought to us and to some of our friends as far as, 2020 hasn't gone the way any of us really thought it would when we started out the year. How has it impacted you?
Well, so for the past 17 years, I've been doing a stage show, which is Mortified. Did we describe what Mortified is? I can't remember.
I think we should go into talking a little bit about Mortified to explain it for people who aren't acquainted with it.
Let me do the top line, and then I can tell you how it impacted 2020. So I do a project called Mortified, which is adults sharing their most embarrassing childhood writings and stories with total strangers. And it began as a stage show. And then, as you mentioned, we've done a whole bunch of TV and film projects. There's a Mortified podcast, and it's all about looking back and laughing at your past. You can find out about it at getmortified.com. We even just released, we'll talk about it at some point in this, we released this game, which encourages people to tell their own stories about their lives. And what's interesting about this game is that because it just came out in 2020, which is the best year for it to have come out, because the stage shows, of course, disappeared. And at that same time, I was having to work and finish writing the card game that we were working on. And so that was weirdly fortuitous, but yeah, it's thrown me for when you're an event producer who's used to gathering people in rooms, hopefully hundreds and hundreds of people. That's hard. And virtual comedy shows are awful. And so I've really kind of we've really doubled down on, it's a small company, but we've doubled down on podcasting, Coincidentally, right before the pandemic started, we sold a new podcast aimed at tweens to tell stories about kids in middle school. It's an educational podcast, but also a comedy podcast called Ooh, You're in Trouble. And that has taken up about, most of my life since February, or March or something like that. So working on the game and that, and then Mortified is still, the podcast is still going, and we're also making a TV series in Israel somehow.
What?
Israel? We've over the years we've licensed Mortified to do TV projects in other countries, and Israel is the second one to go. Sorry, I have hiccups. Into production.
That's awesome for an interview, by the way. Hiccups are always
really good for an audio.
It shows it's real. It shows it's real.
That's what we're all about at Mortified, authenticity. So 2020 has been, like for everybody, a bit topsy-turvy.
Well, I think what's been interesting, and you touched on it in talking about, what works and what doesn't work for these online events. When we're looking at virtual events, and certainly in the association space, so many people are trying to figure out how to take their conferences and to make them more engaging and more interacting. And one of the biggest problems that they have is this piece where it's connecting people to one another. It's allowing people that, you can go and you can learn in a million different ways online, but to connect with somebody else is very, very difficult. And so one of the things I think that you have always been really great about is pulling stories from people and helping people to connect with others through those stories. So can you talk to me a little bit about, how this card game fits into that? Because I got this game, we talked about it, and not only do I have to just give you kudos for it looking super cool, because it looks really amazing.
Beautiful. The design, which I did not do, the design of I Can't Believe I Did That it's pretty rad and retro, and I'm very happy with what the people over at Penguin Random House did. It's really good.
It looks so awesome. Fantastic for gifts, everyone. If you're watching, please check out the link that I just put at the bottom of the screen so that you can actually order this game. You have time to get it before the holidays, I'm pretty sure. So
and you can play it on Zoom.
But actually that brings up another great thing that I think is wonderful about Mortified is this participation. And I actually am going to bring up someone very well. Hi.
What?
How did you get here? Oh my goodness.
Is this one of those
this is your life kind of moments where
there's no like zinger though, Dave. Like it's not like you're the father, it's like nothing like that.
Wow. Yeah. That'd be bonus points for that one. That'd be really exciting. What I thought we would do, and so for everyone who doesn't know Miss Sara Grace McCandless, who's on here, look at this. I'm already prepared. Check out Sarah. She is not just a good friend of mine, and also was responsible for, bringing me into the whole Mortified orbit so that I got to meet Dave in the first place. But she's also a writer, so you have to go and check out all of her great work. But I thought, who better than to bring on another? Yes, that's one of her books.
This is her book.
Oh my gosh, I'm so impressed, Dave. That's amazing. Yes.
Oh my gosh,
I keep it by my nightstand.
Okay. Jolene, another great writer. Go ask Ogre.
I also have her book on my shelf.
I have her book too.
What Mortified does this is what Dave built, is bringing together people. Well, first of all, you built community. And secondly, story at a time. You're honing in on stories at a time that was such a vulnerable but like pivotal time in our lives.
It was.
And yet, how relatable is that? No matter what state, what country, what era you grew up in. You really are the master of that, Dave. So I'm super excited to get this game in my hands too.
It is true. I mean, and Ron says he just bought his game. It's going to be there on December 9th. Thank you, Ron. That's awesome. He says, do you have any plans to make it an online version of the game?
And also Ron wonderfully wrote it out as initials. One of the fun things of ICBIDT, like, I love that that takes effort. ICBIDT.
I know.
So I can't believe I did that. Technically can be played online. If you go to getmortified.com/game, there is actually some downloadable instructions for a slightly modified version for Zoom or FaceTime. You could play, like, honestly, most games, what we learned when we were writing the instructions was anything you write, just make it simple, because people are going to play it however they want, because they're not really going to read your instructions. So people will figure out how to play it on Zoom anyway, but we did offer a thing at getmortified.com/game.
Except for, I have to say, I'm a rule follower and I read the instructions. So listen, I read the instructions. I have my cards out, and what I wanted to do, if you're both up for it, is I wanted to play a round of this. I wanted to see if we could do this right now.
This is amazing. Sure.
I love this.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, and I'm supposed to shuffle.
I had no idea we're doing this. This is great.
I know. It would be nice of me to tell you what we're going to do, wouldn't it? But
this is my highlight of 2020. I'm not joking. Like this.
So let me at least give you the premise of the game. So the idea of the game, kind of like what Mortified is people getting on stage, sharing their childhood stories with people. We wanted to create a game that didn't have the barrier of you need to go through producers of a stage show to kind of get the fun of sharing your past, because you get to bond with, you learn a lot about people when you share your past. And we also want to do a game that didn't require you to have a diary or a love letter, or these artifacts that are the sort of anchors of Mortified. So the idea of this game that sort of Mortified produces, called I Can't Believe I Did That, is that we'll just prompt you with, like, tell me a moment when, here's one as an example. Tell me a moment when you were irresponsible. Biggest responsibility shirker wins. And we all go around and we all tell our story, if we have one. If you don't, you can just bypass yourself. And we will vote on who is the person who shirks the responsibility most. So it's not really even about who has the best story or funniest story, but just sort of whose story matches the category the most.
And what I love too, by the way, not to interrupt, is that in this, there's this oath of awkwardness, and it has this thing that you read out before the game where it's like, I do solemnly swear that some shit's about to get real awkward, real surprising, real fun. And it goes, you're like doing this oath to get everybody in the same spot. And if you're having trouble with picking the right person to start, like who's going to start the game, kick the game off, it's you drag out the picture of them when they're like, everyone drags out childhood pictures, and those people who look the least like what they used to is the one that kicks it off. That's great.
Thanks. I hope people actually, it was very fun getting to write the Oath of Awkwardness. I'd
like to have that hanging on my wall. Like, no,
can we do that? I know.
Every morning and recite it. Probably. So.
Maybe we can recite it to each other. Maybe we should call each other, and be like, okay, here it is.
There's my headspace right there. I just need that read by Dave or you.
Yes. So can I do this? I'm going to say, okay, so I read off the card, and Dave, you have to correct me if I'm doing this the wrong way, but here it is. Are you ready? Yeah. Is everyone ready? Ron, are you ready? Jolene? All right. So a moment when you were on Santa's naughty list, the biggest rascal wins. So think of a moment when you were on Santa's naughty list. And then can I talk about these cards that are supposed to spark, like the sparks?
You could. So basically there are a bunch of, everyone is given a bunch of cards that look like this.
Yes.
Which are just sort of to spark your thoughts. But this is not how I would play it online, because not everybody has this.
Mm-hmm.
but sort of, so you might have a card in your hand that says celebrity or hero or misfit or language barrier, just all these different things that you could pair up with your Santa's naughty memory. You're like, oh, because it's daunting when somebody asks you to tell you a story about your life, you freeze. It's like if somebody says, tell me your most embarrassing moment. I don't know. But if you say, tell me an embarrassing moment, it's a little easier.
So, okay. So you were on, and talk about awkward. Like me right now, I feel very awkward and trying to make this game happen and make it work. By the way, I'm really, really crappy at games, you guys. Like I'm just horrible. Board games, card games, doesn't matter. So guide me through it, work with me. But like, okay, so say we're playing this and that moment comes where you feel awkward and you're saying, oh my gosh, okay, when I was on Santa's naughty list, oh, what was a time? And so how do you help people to feel more at ease with releasing some of these stories that they have? What are some tricks that you've learned or tactics that you've learned along the way
to get people to share their stories?
Yes. And Sara, actually you too, since I know that you are a story collector as well.
Well, clearly I'm doing a bad job of it because none of us have shared a story. But
I'm buying time.
I actually do have tricks. I do have tricks. If I was to talk to you about, I could say, Kiki, tell me about who you were when you were, tell me what happened to you when you were 8. You might, if you're somebody who's a little, maybe you had a hard childhood or maybe you don't trust me, all that stuff. If I was to reframe that and say, talk about that girl who was 8. Tell me something she loved. Oh, she loves soccer. Tell me about that 8-year-old soccer player, right? And if you ask a specific question, like, you know how when you ask your kids, like, or anybody, like a significant other, whatever, like, how was your day? And they go, I don't know, it was fine. They give you a boring answer because you asked a boring question. But if you have a specific question, like, if you prompt people with specifics, like, what was the best part of your day? Or tell me what that girl who was 8, tell me one of her favorite movies, that soccer player. It's easier for you to tell me. And you're also less intimidated because I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the third party person, this girl. And the bigger trick is if you have an object, like an artifact, like a photograph. Tell me about the girl in this photo. Tell me about the kid who wrote this diary entry. Tell me about the kid who loved this G.I. Joe figure. Whatever it is, it creates a distance that lets people feel safer to talk about themselves.
I love it. So back to our, when you were on Santa's naughty list, I have to say that Ron, he has something to share. He forgot to come home for Thanksgiving dinner with his family and didn't call to say that he wasn't coming. He was still on the naughty list at Christmas. That's a pretty good one. I think that you would probably, I don't know, this year, at least we have an excuse, but I have to say that the past 3 years, I have tried to find reasons to not show up for Thanksgiving dinners with my family sometimes. And those of you, family who might be watching this, I do love you. Just so you know, I love you very much. But what about you, Sara? Do you have a story to share on a time you were on Santa's naughty list?
Yeah, of course, my brain went right to kind of teen years because of Mortified, right? What we focused on there too. And to kind of circle back to what you were saying, Dave, too, how do you get people to share with you? I do want to say that I love that answer for that, because putting out a first person and second or third, when you're trying to get somebody to open up, especially something that's very personal like that, I learned a lot of that from working with the Mortified team. And I was, fortunate enough to be able to help be a part of the team that brought the show to the DC area for the first time, right? But I learned from working with you and working with Neil. And I always felt like those sessions, you were so skilled at getting people to talk about very personal, vulnerable things by taking it out of that first person. It's something I think we're taught as writers as well, especially if it's like more of a traumatic event. But Santa's naughty list. I go back to, I don't know. I was like thinking of like stuff I got away with from, I was a pretty good teenager though. I was like always worried about getting in trouble. Like, I don't know. The biggest thing I like did was like lied about, I always said I was going to the movies and we were actually going to Canada to drink at Mother's, or we said we were going to Mother's Pizza and we were going to this terrible bar called Spinners. I can even do that now. My whole childhood would be different because you need a passport to get across the border, not some crappy Bob's photo ID. And Dave, you grew up in Michigan too, so maybe you know what I'm talking about. But
well, I don't know. Any bar called Spinners that lets in teenagers is a bad time. A bad time is about to be happen. Like by the time you wake up, you will regret something.
Yeah. Like Goldschlag, I was a disaster. So I mean, I think about stuff like that too. But I went right into teen time frame versus like maybe some things I've done in the last 5 or 10 years, to be on the naughty list. So
well, Sara, I'm actually really interested in hearing those. We have to catch up after this interview to find out what's been going on the most recent years. Dave, do you have a good one to tell?
Actually mine is ties to the origin of Mortified, weirdly, which is when my sister went off to college, my older sister, I snuck into her room and I read her teenage diary, something I would never do today because I know based on my profession that diaries are sacred, important, and all of that. But being a nosy little brother, I read her diary in order to, find out was she complaining about me. Not only was she not complaining about me, she did write about me, but in like not even a complimentary way, but a concerned way. Oh. Like that I was going through a hard time and that she was worried about me. And so I immediately felt like a complete ass. I shut the book. And I think maybe actually, I don't think I've realized this part of it, but like maybe in that moment, it taught me the sacred quality of the diary, of just how important these things are, and then 20 years later, I'm doing Mortified.
I immediately, so first of all, there was a bar that teenagers could get into when I was a goth kid in high school. It was, we had to drive like 2.5 hours to get to it. And it was like a dance club for goths. It was called Roadkill Heaven in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Roadkill Heaven, that was actually its name. I mean, I think it was Roadkill Heaven, like LLC, if you were to look at like what it was, the business it was doing. But no, I was thinking about the fact that when I was on Santa's naughty list, there's a part of me that's really fearful to actually share this, but in high school, I was really lousy at math. I'm still really bad at math. And I went most of a semester without doing my homework. And I was going to get an F. And I found out, and the teacher, I went to talk to her and she said, well, if you can magically turn in these assignments that you haven't done all this time by the end of the day, then I'll give you a D. And so I went to one of my really smart friends who had all of their assignments with them. And I just furiously copied all of it was really a semester's worth. There's no way that a person would be able to do all of this. The teacher knew, right? I knew. And I knew as I was passing them to her, and she did that thing where it's like, really, you're going to do this? And I'm like, yeah. And I turned them in, and she, God bless her soul, thank you, Mrs. Hamilton. She passed me, and I did do my homework after that. I was redeemable, but I was on Santa's naughty list for sure then, and I probably didn't deserve to get the D. But
if there was a YA book about this, I think the title would be "Thank You, Mrs. Hamilton."
Thank you, Mrs. Hamilton. Yes, totally. And I see we have a comment over here. Please share a picture from your goth days. Oh, Ron, maybe sometime in the future. By the way, if you saw this earlier, Kylie is my sister, in case no one knows that. So Kylie says she's not going to tell my family that I about our my not wanting to show up for the holidays, and I appreciate that, Kylie, very much.
Hi, Kylie.
Yeah. And Anne says she appreciated your resourcefulness. Yeah, she was a kind woman, and I really appreciate her. I really do. So that was good. That was our story. Do we want to try another round or no? What do you think?
We could try one more, sure.
Want to try one more?
What I like, by the way, is when the first person tells a thing, it just starts to, like, for lack of a better term, like lubricate, where it just sort of like people just start to kind of like melt and ease up, and they start to, doorways that they hadn't opened in a long time just start to open. And
yes.
Yeah. And so it's just like stories that I forget about. I'm like, oh yeah, this.
Well, and that I think it's really interesting that you put these cards together like this, because it is powerful. I know that with Mortified, when we were working with people, going through those journals, going through the diaries, talking with them about, some of these stories, you can't help but not get better connected to people that you're sharing these pieces of your past with. And I love that whether it's through this game or through Mortified, that what you're doing through story is really helping people to better connect, because they're sharing something that, you don't normally have an excuse to share in a Zoom call, a typical Zoom call or something.
Well, Dave, I know too, like I use this, and I mean, my business world too is all about building connections between companies and the people that they are trying to pay to have patron them, right? Their customers or whatever. And, the Mortified whole mission is like, it's all about connection and being vulnerable, but there's this inclusiveness. I just remember, like, every show we would, like, we all survived. We all went through this together. And I feel like, I don't know if you're seeing this in some of the work that you do with companies too, but that you were so ahead of the game, I thought, in terms of like having that type of vulnerability and connection in a business world versus just in this personal storytelling world too. It's pretty universal.
Sometimes I do storytelling. One of my favorite things to do is not entertainment oriented, is more corporate stuff. So I do storytelling workshops with like the marketing department of company X or whatever, like will bring me in, and we do like an hour to an hour and a half kind of like hang, where the goal is like to demystify story and to tell people it's not just this thing for artists who are flaky. It's also for very organized, responsible business people who have to communicate messages, whatever those messages may be. And story is just a tool. And so we do this. And the tool that I like to use when I teach people about story is your life, that you are your own textbook. And so we play, I'll ask like very safe questions about childhood for those who are comfortable. Like, what's the first scary movie you remember seeing? Things like that most people are comfortable sharing. But finding out how can we turn that into a story? And so it also winds up bonding people and bringing them kind of closer together. And so that's,
oh my gosh,
I love doing that, because I love seeing the light bulbs switch on over people's heads where they're like, I'm not creative. I love when people say that. And it's like,
I love that.
Ridiculous. You are.
Well, and it's with a question like that, it's a low risk vulnerability. Like it's allowing people to share something personal about themselves, but with a low, like no one can hate you for seeing your first scary movie, right? If you're sharing that. So it's low risk in that, somebody's not going to decide not to hire you because you saw Exorcist when you were 5,
And it freaked you out and you peed your pants and you didn't sleep for 5 weeks. And to this day, you can't watch, movies about priests.
Oh, Ron says, yes, it'd be great to hire you to coach our BAs and product owners on storytelling. Absolutely. By the way, Ron said, and let's make sure that we get you connected. But Ron also said, I'm rewriting some of the lyrics this afternoon from Hamilton to incorporate the phrase. Thank you, Mrs. Hamilton. Yes, it's a good use of your time, Ron, I have to say. Yeah, I think that that's one of the things that I've seen sort of missing, and people are trying really hard to remedy that, to figure out ways, low risk ways to introduce vulnerability so that people can better connect through whether it's these conferences that they have or team meetings and things. But I feel like, or at least in my experience, it seems like there hasn't been as much proactive work done in that area, so that I don't see that that's built into a lot of the meetings that I've been a part of, at least. Have you experienced anything different, or have you been hearing the same?
In terms of like that people don't build in like vulnerability and things like that into the workforce?
Yeah, that engagement, and really specifically because storytelling's the topic of today's chat is, you know, introducing an excuse for storytelling to happen, or an opportunity for it to happen.
Well, personal storytelling may not always be appropriate in the workplace, but I do think, and there are just people who are just like, look, I work with you people. I
don't want to know.
I don't want you to know anything about me. I could never work in an environment where I like didn't have buddies and like friends that I gossiped with at lunch, but other people are different. But what I will say is, so the vulnerability part is helpful, I think, in ways that it very much can help, because you have to, if business is about relationships, the best way to have a relationship is to bond with somebody. And you can bond with them about, shared interests, but that can be a little surface. But story is just a mechanism to deliver information. Story is just a truck that's just taking information from here to there. It's just a very elegant truck. It's a pleasing delivery system. And the idea is that everyone has an information to deliver. If you're a teacher, you want to deliver, maybe historical data to your class, right? If you're a history teacher. If you are a doctor, you are trying to communicate to your patients. If you are, a marketer, you're trying to communicate like why this, detergent matters. And by using story and the components of story, you're able to harness a tool that lets you like make, that allows your audience to care about the information. Like, we are wired to care about information when it is presented in the form of a story. We're just wired that way, which is weird.
Yeah. Ron says, agreed. Story can be a catalyst for trust and mutual respect. Okay, so
I'd like to see this mysterious Ron. I
know. He's fantastic. So let's talk about a moment when, not to get off of Ron, but Ron, I want you to play with this particular story as well. This one is a moment when you were second fiddle. A moment when you were second fiddle.
Sara is laughing, so I think
I know. I was going to say something like that was just snarky, and it wasn't true, so I'm not going to say it. Past relationship joke. No, I'm totally kidding. Second fiddle.
Oh my gosh.
We'll just let that flow by.
So Sara's story is, I dated someone where I felt that way, and she doesn't want to say more. And
well, it is true. It's just not the most significant, I guess, relationships. But there's got to be something better in there. See, now I'm going to stall and dig.
Right. So that's what the purpose of these sparks.
Okay, so layer that in. Show me how that works.
So so like, here's the thing.
You have to say it.
Like, you would have a bunch of these. So here's one that says hero, but it also says personal hero, rock star. I don't know what else it has. Here's one that says rebellion. Let's see here.
I got one and it says mom, but it also has best trait, worst trait, sense, sounds, missing. So these are cards that where if somebody's like, oh, I don't know, it's kind of those little nudges to move you, into thinking of stories that you might not have thought of before, which I think is really creative because you introduce the word mom and oh my gosh, that opens up a whole tome of options.
For second fiddle.
Yeah, sure.
So
yeah.
Story for you then with mom.
For me, oh God. Okay. So, so I am the oldest of 2 girls that my mom had, and it was the second round. Like I have 2 older half brothers, and then there's me and my younger sister. And so we kind of had 2 different households that we were growing up in. And when my little sister came along, I mean, it felt like I was always second fiddle because she was the baby. She was the baby of the family. She was little. She ate like a bird. She was so cute. And so I would say that probably the story that comes to mind is I have these pictures that are in a photo album, and it's of my sister sitting with my dad, and it's then my sister sitting with my mom. And I took the picture. Like we were sitting in a booth and they asked her to move and like sit next to them so I could take the picture. I'm in none of the pictures, right? And I was like, hi, but she was the cute little kid and everybody wanted the cute little picture with Kylie. See, Kylie, look. And she's still cute. So, but that was a time when I can honestly say, like, I totally played second fiddle and I have the photo evidence, like I took the pictures. I know it was at Casa Montez in Joplin, Missouri. And anyway, yep.
So what I love about that is I could not think of Kylie says that's a terrible memory.
She said like it's a terrible memory. Whatever. There are good ones too. I could talk about the time when I made you drink goldfish water, but whatever.
Does goldfish water mean fish soaked in Pepperidge Farm goldfish or actual goldfish?
It was actual goldfish water. We did like a truth or dare thing and I made her drink dirty goldfish water.
I mean, but Pepperidge Farms, and I mean, talk about product innovation there. They just give them an idea. So, I mean, make it keto.
That's like the new energy drink.
Right. And it's keto, like just throw the word keto on there and maybe put some CBD in it. And
truly, well, the other thing I had her drink was pickle juice. So it's very like in like keeping with the times. And Ron says, second fiddle, my prom date got a ride home from my best friend. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. I think he wins. He wins. That's terrible.
So the thing that I love though is like I didn't know what story to tell, but the minute you started saying a thing, I was like, oh, it opened a door, and I walked in that door, and I had a memory of going to a party, my first like high school boy girl kind of thing where like people were smoking and there were bongs, and I was like, what? And I was like the guest of someone, and I thought everyone was staring at me as like, what's he doing here kind of thing. And of course they couldn't have cared less about me. But yeah, so that's the power of memory.
You did the same thing for me, Kiki, because then I'm like, siblings, right? Because I'm the baby of, I have an older brother.
Yeah.
And my father was in the automotive industry my whole life. He was in public relations. So I've been to so many auto shows in Detroit, I can't even tell you. But there was a time where I wasn't, and it was sort of like my dad did that with my brother. And I felt very kind of second fiddle to that, and love you, Dad, and love you, Matt. But like at the time, like I think part of it was the time and sort of assumptions and sort of these gender bias things that were going on, like cars are for boys, instead of like maybe I want to go check the cars out too, and not just the opera stars who were there like doing autographs, which was a thing at the auto show. I don't know why, but yeah, you opened up. I wouldn't have gone and thought about like the sibling thing if you hadn't brought that up.
Oh, yeah. It's so crazy how it is interesting to sit through, and I have the table topics cards that because they introduce different, a chance for people to share different ideas and stories and stuff. But I like these though, because they are different from the table topics cards in that it is not just asking your opinion on something, or to like hide out in the news of the day. but it's actually asking for you to share your own stories. And it really gets into that in a more personal way, where I feel like with something like a deck of table topics, you can hide out, right? You can hide behind those. The latest research, blah, blah, blah.
The game, and I do wish it I have regret of like that it should have been titled this, but is like, it's really, you should walk away thinking, oh, I never knew that about you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Sara, I know I've put you on the spot with like
bachelor party.
I wanted, Dave, this was like, I asked Sara this morning, I was just, please, can you come on? Because I just thought it would be so much fun to have her on. And everyone, please go follow Sara, find out everything that she's up to. She is a brilliant marketer. She is brilliant, a brilliant writer. And
team is here with me right now.
She also throws amazing baby showers for for her friends. I can say from personal experience. So
Side hustle guy. It was really great to see you both. Dave, congratulations on the game. And like what you've created something, I think, that is one of the things that's had the greatest impact on my life, to be completely honest with you. My involvement with Mortified helped shape me and put me on a path that I didn't know I needed to be on. I think you're an incredible storyteller, and you have such heart in everything you do. So it was just lovely to crash this party.
I love you, and I love hearing that, and I can't wait to cry after this phone call when I
do a cry session for us. So.
Aww. I love it. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Right now,
oh my
I'll be an
gosh,
emotional wall. No
was
tears.
was that amazing, or what? Were you expecting that at all?
No.
So what I wanted to do, so we talked about a little bit about the game. What I wanted to do is to sort of come full circle and to talk a little bit about how story has played a role in your life specifically, because you are a writer, you are a creator, you have sort of focused in story and storytelling for, it seems, at least most of your career, and it has obviously shaped who you are. What I wanted to do is ask you a little bit about, have you always been a storyteller, or is this something that has, come along the way? Was it something that you got into gradually, like from college on, or what's the story about being a storyteller with Dave Nadelberg?
I was always a kid who wrote, and so I've had a narrative in my life. I have had a narrative in my life about people were like, "You're a good writer," and so I always thought that that's what I'm supposed to do, something in the concept of storytelling. I didn't know what that would be, if that meant I would be a journalist. I moved to Los Angeles, where I live now, to be an animated film writer. Like I wanted to write like Pixar movies and Jim Henson movies. And so that's, that was, and then I got to Los Angeles and I had some success as a screenwriter, and things were starting to get sold and bought and produced. And then, which is totally common in this industry, they all fluid. And when, in the ashes of that, I thought I realized one of the things that I kind of stunk at was story. I was good with premise, and I felt like I was good with dialogue and stuff, but I kind of would always get these notes that I'm not good with story, and I'm still struggle with that. And so I had this idea to do a show where people read love letters and diaries called Mortified, and I was like, I'm going to do this for a night and stop putting so much pressure on myself to finish a spec script for the TV show Monk, and because I was like driving myself crazy trying to write stuff I didn't care about. And I was like, I'm going to step away from that and do this thing that's about comedy and not about story. And then Mortified was a hit stage show. And then I thought it would be a one-night experiment, and it just kind of took over my life.
Yeah.
But weirdly wound up teaching me everything about story. And so now I've been like looping back to the writing portion of my life, and I've been working on a book for many, many years that is thankfully not about Mortified, and it's a memoir, and and so I've been working on actually 2 books this year, and that's been my goal, is to go out with 2 books to the publishers soon. So I've been working. So I'll be doing that very, very soon, actually.
How hard is it to be a creator and a creative who is trying to like come up with these new inspiring things that you're working on, but to have something that is so successful that it's hard to sort of break away from it? Because on the one hand, who doesn't love this, like the concept of Mortified? Mortified has been wildly successful. I mean, you've got Sundance, Netflix, blah, 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 like the books and all of the stuff. I can imagine though that it's like, as much as you love it, it's also like, I'm not just mortified, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
you picked up on that wonderfully. And so after 17 years of that, I love Mortified, and I love that people think of me as like the diary guy or whatever, which is weird. Like that became my life, is that I grew up to read people's childhood diaries.
Yeah.
But sorry, I'm distracted by Ron's question about the
Ron
painting.
saying, speaking of story, if you're listening to this later, Ron asks, speaking of story, what is the picture behind you, Dave? That's a good question. I was wondering that earlier.
It is my grandpa. Unfortunately, I can't get rid of this glare.
Oh
Sorry.
yeah. No, that was a cool picture though. That was your grandpa.
Yeah, I have artwork all over my place of most of it is family oriented art. Like my dad was a marketing exec for an alcohol company, and he created a drink called Haagen-Dazs cream liqueur that was like a hit drink in the 80s until a licensing dispute ended it. And I've been tracking down like promotional art from it for years, and I finally found some on eBay. And so like, I have some of that hung up, and like my great grandpa was like a firefighter, and so I have like his helmet or something like that. So this is my grandpa, just a painting of him that been, or maybe it was even done at like a wedding or something like that, but I always liked it.
It's an awesome, I can't even imagine what kind of weddings was your grandfather going to where there's a painting.
Maybe it was a bar mitzvah. I don't know, just like something where it looks like it's just like a pencil. I mean, a crayon. I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's cool. We all really like it. I'm with Ron. I think it's amazing. Sarah has a good question here. She says, I'm curious what Dave has to say about how and if stories from that adolescent sweet spot have evolved, like moving from an analog to digital era in terms of where these precious artifacts come from, like written diary versus vlog. This is such a good question. I'm very curious about your answer.
I mean, I'm a big fan of the more things change, the more they stay the same. So in terms of written to digital, Mortified itself, since year 1, has been dealing with digital artifacts, emails, blogs. Now we are in the era where live journal and things like that are retro. So we do AIM chats frequently on the show. Most of what Mortified does is letters and diaries that were written by hand, but not all of it. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. I do believe that as long as and you're the mother of a middle schooler, but as long as there are angsty middle schoolers or confused middle school kids or high school kids with feelings that they don't know how to process, there will always be a chunk of them needing to express themselves. And I know that people seem to think that means Snapchat and TikTok, and it does. And one day we will be doing that on our show if our show continues. But I think they will be doing more longer form things. So I think YouTube, vlogs, as well as written stuff. I think kids like hiding under the sheets and writing with a little lamp and writing, about the boy who broke their heart. Still,
you want to know something though? Like, here's the thing: as a mother, I know there's the fear of the, at least when we were kids, our stupid things that we did, weren't recorded for all to see, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I get that. But, on the flip side of it, I find that I'm going in and I'm having to screenshot stuff and try to save it, because the thing about journals and diaries is that they're not as easy to get rid of. And so it's like, my daughter, if she feels like something is cringy, she goes back and she looks at something that she recorded, where, she had these like these little shows that she created that were called Secret Agent Panda Pig or something like that. And it was like she had a whole song and stuff.
How
But
did
she
that
started
go?
How'd the song go?
Yes, I demand to know.
Oh gosh, I can't. Like I actually will be able to think of it, but now I'm on the spot. You don't want to hear it anyway. A secret, like it should be like episode 9, blah 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 blah, season 2, episode 9, but they never were sequential. Like she just made them up as she got to that part.
I would love this.
It was amazing, but I found out she deleted some of them because as she got older, she thought they were cringy, and I'm like, no, that's gold. Don't ever don't delete those. And so I worry about some of these things, because I think a lot of the reasons that our diaries exist to bring them to you, Dave, and to have you like, here's my diary,
Well,
is
you could
because,
oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say is because it wasn't so easy to hit delete,
You could argue though that you have more impetus to get rid of your written stuff because they are objects taking up space. And it's not hard to throw something in the trash, and people did, but so I don't know if there's any data on it would be very fun to fund that.
Where's the research? Yeah.
And my girlfriend's a data scientist, so I could put her on that. But like the idea of like like are we more likely to delete stuff today? I don't know. It is easier to delete it, but it's also easier to save it because it's not taking up any room.
True. Yeah.
And I'm constantly meet people who throw stuff out and say, "Oh, I would be great for your show, but
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some great comments that are coming in. Ron was saying, my kids can quickly produce a picture of themselves as a small child on their phone. I don't have that. Need to go dig out an old album. And Sarah says, Mortified will always continue because the stories are so relatable, universal, and authentic. Doesn't matter if they trace back to what I documented, my Judy Blume diary. Yes, she had one. Or what one of my nieces documents on their respective TikTok. That's true. I do worry sometimes about, as I like want to pull away from Facebook, but can't. Sometimes the memories that come back from like 10 years of documenting things on Facebook. Another concern is like, well, what happens if Facebook goes away or if I can't access it or whatever, So I guess this is a reminder to all of you, if you worry about that same sort of thing too, to go and save those things and download them for your own memories. But
Mortified, we've dealt with this a bunch where people are like, I have a live journal, I have a Zanga, I have a fanfiction.net account, and I want to submit my stuff, but they can't figure out how to get into those accounts.
Oh my gosh, that's so tragic. It's so tragic.
Because they haven't signed in 10 years.
Well, let's talk about storytelling and the future for Dave, because you've got 2 books that you're working on. And of course, you've got the game that's been released. You just always have so many interesting projects that are happening. What is the future for you when you're looking at storytelling? What's on deck?
Hopefully less plates. Hopefully the 1 or 2 that are in the air are spinning faster. So I'm working on, the main thing is we've been really encouraging people to check out I Can't Believe I Did That, obviously for the holidays, but I'm making a podcast right now all year called Ooh, You're in Trouble, which is aimed at tweens. It is also appealing. I am somebody who is a childless adult, and I would enjoy the show, but it is a show that is aimed at teens who are so that's like 9 to 13-year-olds is our core. And it's an educational series about kids making moments where kids broke a rule, and what are the, like, why did they break that rule, and what are the consequences, and what did they learn? And it's mostly a funny show. It's always an educational show, and it deals with everything from bullying to racism to sexism to protesting your school. It's the coolest thing I've ever worked on. Ooh, You're in Trouble, and it just launched a few weeks ago. I think there are, it's a really cool show. And I act on it.
Yes. Okay.
We bring stories to life with reenactments, drunk history style, and so I'm one of the many people who act on it.
I listened to this with my daughter because I had to test it out, right? We talked and I thought, okay, now let me test this out. So I said, Margot, come here, let's listen to this. And it was so funny. It was so well done. So kudos to you. And I think I have the right, do I have listentotrouble.com?
That's right.
Is that the right website?
The show is Ooh, You're in Trouble on any podcast apps. But Listen to Trouble is the website. And it's really a show about ethics, and our goal is to not shame children for breaking rules or even praise them. Sometimes they're breaking rules because they're little turds who are like, I'm going to shoplift a purse, and they're being selfish. But sometimes they break a rule because a rule should be broken, frankly. Mm-hmm. And it's all about not shaming them and just exploring, like, and engaging the listener and being like, that's what they did. What would you do? It's a lot of these like ethical question things. And so it's really fun.
I like that you call that out too, because like in the show, while you're listening to it, I was listening to it. There is that moment where it says, and now it actually says that the one episode, and now here's the part your parents will like, now this is what the grown-ups like. And it actually asks the question so that it's sort of calling attention to the decisions that were made, along the way. And the one I was listening to was about, it was catfish. It was about a girl who catfished. She had been bullied, and then she ended up catfishing somebody else. And she talked about some of the lessons that she learned in it. And I thought I just thought it was really incredibly interesting to listen to, but also it really, to hear someone who you could tell was still young, sharing their story.
And she's the bully in the story. She's the
right.
villain.
Right. I mean, it was just, it allowed you to have some insight on how many different perspectives there can be. And each one of us has our own version of any story. Right. So it was fascinating.
Yeah. And we're working right now on an episode that was hopefully going to be out by the end of the year, all about, I got to interview one of the members of the Little Rock Nine who, who in the 1950s helped change racial segregation. So it was just a high school girl who went up against the entire state of Arkansas and its military to basically say, I deserve to go to a great public high school that even though I am an African American and there are laws in my state against that. And so she fought the system and won, and it's along with 8 other kids. And it's a heroic and really cool story, and I can't wait for people to hear that one.
I love it. Well, okay. So what I've been trying to do is at the end of every episode, I have been asking a lightning round of questions. And I feel kind of like we skated the surface of that by playing the game. But listen, we only skated the surface. There is still a little bit left to be uncovered. So in our remaining, I guess, minute, maybe you'll give me one more minute. I'd like to ask you some rapid fire questions if you're up for that. Okay.
Rapid.
All right. An experience that really shaped who you are as a person and or professional.
There are a lot. but the one that comes to my mind as a rapid fire would be a summer where I went to a camp, and I think I went from being a very like known and like, I don't know if I was popular, but like liked kid. And I went to a place where I was amongst the nerds and didn't know anybody, and I really felt alone a lot, and you know, got into fights and was like made fun of, and it was just like it opened my eyes up to empathy in a different way.
Okay, that's a good one. All right. An example of how luck or timing has helped or hindered you.
Timing, probably in terms of well, in terms of the pandemic. The pandemic has in many ways detonated my life and really hurt it, but it also created a lot of opportunity for me. Disruption, not to sound like a gross person in Silicon Valley, but like disruption can be very good, because pivoting is just inherently, you learn things from it. So this year, you know, it allowed me to do lots of things in my personal life that felt a lot better for me, and then also to do things in terms of my professional life and just pursuing, like getting to make this podcast and drill down into it, but not getting bogged down in the stage shows, because stage shows stopped existing for me this year.
I like it. All right. And the final question. A few adjectives people who know you best might use to describe you.
Jerk.
Jerk.
I don't know. I hope. How do you say any of this without sounding like an arrogant turd?
I'm kidding, and I'm so right. I don't know.
I don't know. I think people who know me, I think curious and playful would be two adjectives that people would usually assign to me. But I don't know. Maybe there's some enemies out there who are like, that guy, he's not curious or playful. Full of himself.
Yeah, I know him pretty well. He's
pretty well.
I would add humble to that, because the one thing that I've noticed the whole time that I've known you is that for all of the successes and the exciting things that have happened, you're not the one that's out there tooting your own horn saying, look at me, how great I am. You're always putting the spotlight on your creation or your partners or the people around you. And so I would add my 2 cents to that. That's how I would add.
Thank you so much. That's very sweet of you. So what you're basically saying is I could never run for president.
Probably not.
I figured. Yeah,
sorry about that, but you know.
That's quite okay.
You're still going to have to like look at people's diaries and stuff. We all have different lots in life. So, well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been such an immense pleasure. I feel so lucky. Everyone should listen to your podcast. They should check out everything that is Mortified, and they should also go and get the game. Yes. I can't believe I did that. That is the thing you have to go do right now. If you cared anything about this show and anything about Dave and anything about me, you'll go and do that right now.
It is a good way to bond with people you haven't seen all 2020 because of, you know, the Zoom of it all.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And I am so grateful to you being here today.
Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
All right. All right, everyone. So I hope you learned something great and that you're going to be able to take these lessons about storytelling and these ideas. And of course, you're going to pick up the game for all of your holiday gifting needs. Until next time, everyone, keep asking questions to learn every day. As Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a great week, everyone.